Okay, the question of the day is, are Jewish leaders infallible? I want to thank Rabbi Josh Fluke from Yeshiva University for putting all this stuff together. Okay.
Is this the topic of Das Torah?
No, this is a different topic of Das Torah. This is interesting. What Rabbi Fluke did. I don't know the person to call him Josh. So what Rabbi Fluke did was he was looking at Tanach, and he says, I'll read his introduction. He said, when studying Tanakh, we often find passages that give the impression that our leaders made mistakes. The question is, how do we understand those passages? And he's going to provide some possibilities to deal with that. Okay, we're not getting into rabbinic power. We're not getting into rabbinic infallibility. That's a different topic. As a matter of fact, I thought I made a mistake, but I was wrong. Clearly, rabbis can be fallible. So much so that we have a whole tractate dedicated to their fallibility, and it's called Horiot. And Horiot is 19 pages of very terse, tough Gemara, which discusses what happens when the Sanhedrin or the court makes a mistake and causes people to sin. Since we have a whole tractate dedicated to that, it is clear, and the Torah talks about it also, it is quite clear that even though we would say that when the rabbis made a decision to kill somebody, okay, and let's say that person was found afterwards, after he was killed, that other people said, oh, we should have been here before, we tried to get here, and you killed an innocent man. At that point we say that Hashem would not have allowed an innocent man to be put to death. Obviously he did something that so these witnesses couldn't get to the court system, but at the same time we're recognizing the court system could have failed. With all of the safeguards we put into the system, that Hashem put into the system, mistakes can be made, and we have to recognize that. So when it comes to Das Torah, which would be another class in its own right, and I think I did see that actually written up. I didn't look at that class because I really wanted this one. But we're talking about, like I said, did Avraham make mistakes? Did Moshe make mistakes? Did David make mistakes? We always say that David committed adultery. Is it true? Is it not true? How do we view that? How could such a tzaddik do that sort of thing? He wrote Tehillim, he wrote this, he wrote that. How could Avram Avinu have made mistakes? Moshe Rabbeinu. Is there anybody who doesn't make a mistake? Okay, and like I said, why does the Torah tell us this? You can ask?
Yes, Das Torah.
Das Torah is a term of saying that whatever the Chazal said or whatever the rabbis say must be true, because they represent Torah. So even if they said 2 plus 2 equals 5 on a ridiculous level, if they would say 2 plus 2 equals 5, we must bow to their understanding of 2 plus 2 equaling 5. Many people would be offended by my use of that statement, but okay, fine. Those who are watching, the thousands and millions of people who are watching me on YouTube, so they will take offense to that. But nonetheless, that we want to give the rabbis a cloak of infallibility many times. So that is what we call Das Torah. Not everybody accepts Das Torah. It means Da'at Torah, the knowledge of Torah. So Yiddish, Ashkenazim would say Da'as. Das, actually, they don't say Das, even Das. Okay, but it's a subject in its own.
Yeah, okay. I've often heard.
You fortuitously chose 2 plus 2 equals 5. And actually, in quantum physics, they have found that such a thing is not impossible.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
It was the centerpiece of 1984 as well.
Let's go on. So now the premise, he says, the premise of this question presumes that it's even possible for a person to go throughout his whole life without making mistakes. But you have a verse in Kohelet, a verse in Ecclesiastes that says, Ein tzaddik ba'aretz, there's no righteous person in the land, asher yaseh tov v'lo yechata, that does good and does not and will not sin. There's no, you don't have that. Okay, I'm the one who has the Hebrew. Okay.
That's to keep us in the dark.
Right. Okay. That way, if I translate wrong, you wouldn't know.
Right.
Okay. But it's
but you're infallible, so you won't translate wrong.
I'm not giving infallibility class. Okay, I'm not. It's not Pope Neville yet. Okay,
Oh.
so it's why not? We'll get everybody involved in this one. But anyway, so like I said, if we're presenting already Shlomo HaMelech, who was the author of Kohelet, he said that there's no man in the world that will not sin. So clearly, there's nobody who's infallible. That's what he's setting you up. Okay, fine. So now, we have a Gemara in Shabbat. It says, the Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, there was a brayta that says, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, that Eve, Moshe, and Aaron, and their sins, because of their sins, they died.
Wait.
You don't have it. You don't have it. I'm just translating.
Again?
Yes. You don't have any of the sources. Okay?
Okay.
Because they didn't believe in me. But if they would have believed in me, they still wouldn't have reached their time to die, which, by the way, means that they died before their time.
How that?
We're talking about Moshe and Aaron.
And Aaron.
Okay. Now it says in that Gemara, 4 people died by the bite of the snake. And what does that mean? The sin of Adam and Chava. The snake said to Chava to eat from the fruit. She fell into that trap. She then eats from it, realizes, oh, I am about to die. And that was the curse. I'm going to die. So instead of just dying peacefully and going away, she brings it to her husband and says, Adam, eat some fruit. Isn't it tasty? It tastes beautiful. And of course, he eats it. But she's not happy enough just killing off her husband. She gives it to every single animal that she can find, thus corrupting the whole world, saying, if I'm dying, I'm taking it all with me. The first mass murderer.
Why is this the first time I'm hearing of her realization of dying?
Because she was told, if you eat from it, you're going to die. So she's covering her bases. It's a hedge bet.
Mm-hmm.
She's hedging her bet here. If I'm going to die, I'm taking it all with me.
Okay. No idea what dying means. Did she? No.
Oh, no. First of all, I think everybody knows that death is the cessation of life. I think
we know that now.
No, I think that everybody.
They were immortal, so up until the time they ate the fruit.
That's the question. That's the question. Whether they were immortal or they had some time limit. That's the question out there.
Oh.
It's a question. And some people say immortal, some people not. But that I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get stuck there because what the Gemara is saying is 4 people died because of that sin, and therefore not because of their sins. They were, according to this Gemara, they were sinless. And who are these people? They were Binyamin, the son of Yaakov, Amram, the father of Moshe, Yishai, the father of David, and Kalev, the son of David. So those people never sinned. His Tosfot says, excuse me, how can you say that they did not sin? They only died because of the curse of Adam and Chava. So because it says, and his question is that we said in Kohelet that there's no tzaddik in the world. So he answers, we're talking about the majority of people. You can have some exceptions. So that sets up, by the way, an interesting situation, because while we all want to say, everybody sins, therefore I'm obviously going to fall into it. What can I do? I'm a victim of my circumstances, to quote West Side Story. I'm a victim of the circumstances, okay? The answer is no, you're not. We all have the ability, if so desire, to be sinless. We're not going to be the majority. The majority of people will not do that. Rove people will sin, but there can be some exceptions to the rule. And who knows? You may be the exception. Good luck to you. Okay? So you can't use this as an excuse. You can't use Kohelet as the excuse that you're going to be sinners. Mm-hmm. But in general, we say they're not. So then, we also have the Gemara. He asks another question in the Gemara that says, and we need to go back to Shmos for this. It says, I'll give you his question first. It says, the Gemara implies that Moshe Rabbeinu's only Aveira, only sin was the sin of the waters of Meribah. What happened was the people said to Moshe, it is after 40 years of being in the desert. We have no water. We need water. Miriam had just died. So God says to Moses, take your staff, go to the rock and talk to the rock, telling the rock to give forth this water. Well, Moshe goes to the rock, speaks to the rock doesn't listen, as it were, nothing happened. So Moshe says, according to the Midrash, I have this stick in my hand, I used it 40 years ago, and it worked. Let me see if that works again. Hits the stone. The stone, as it were, cries. Water, droplets of water come out. Hits it the second time, all the water gushes out. God says, because you didn't believe in me, you plural, you and Aaron didn't believe in me, you didn't trust me, then not one of you are going to go into Eretz Yisrael. So it seems that is the only thing he did wrong, right? That's the only thing he's taught. That's the only thing that's brought up every time. Because of Mei Mariva, you can't go in. You have another problem though.
He killed the Egyptian.
That wasn't a sin.
He was saving the life of
That's
somebody
right.
else.
That's right.
But we have another sin. We have plenty of sins from Moshe. Okay. When Moshe Rabbeinu talks to Hashem at the burning bush, he says he doesn't believe that the Jewish people will listen to him. As it says, I'll give you the whole text. It comes from Exodus chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. It says, Moshe answered and he said, they will not believe me. They will not listen to my voice. And because they will say, Hashem did not appear to you. And Hashem said to him, what is that in your hand? What is this in your hand? Moshe answered, a staff. And Hashem said to Moshe, throw down the staff to the ground. And Moshe threw the staff to the ground. And it became a snake. And Moshe hid from the snake. Hashem said to Moshe, send forth your hand and grab its tail. And he sent forth his hand and he grabbed it. And it turned back into a staff in his hand. And so Hashem says, in order that they will believe that Hashem appeared to you, Hashem, the God of their fathers, appeared to you, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you're going to show them this trick, okay? And Hashem said, furthermore, put your hand into your chest. And he brought his hand to his chest, and he brought it out, and behold, his hand was white with saras. What is saras always representing?
Lashon Hara.
Lashon Hara. Spoke Lashon Hara. Clearly, we have a second sin. I can find more if I really wanted to. When Hashem, just in Baal Lotcha, when Hashem says when the people complain to Moshe, we remember the onions, we remember the cucumbers, the garlic, all these things we used to have for free. And Rashi says, Chinam and a mitzvot, free from doing the mitzvot of Hashem. We used to get them free. And so we want this and we want meat. And Moshe says, why did you torture me to make me their nursemaid? Did I bore these people? Bore as in B-R, okay? Did I bore these people? And he goes on and Hashem says, tell them I'm going to give them the meat. And so Moshe says, who are you kidding? You can't feed these people. It's impossible. No matter what you do. You're going to give them fatty meat. They're going to say, no, we wanted the lean meat. If you want the lean meat, they'll say they want the fatty meat. There's no possible way that you can solve everybody's problems here. Because they want to complain. They're not really hungry. If they were hungry, they would slaughter their cows. They still have plenty of cows here. There's plenty of food here if they want. So they just want to complain. There's no way to to help, to answer a complainer. And Hashem says, you think I want to be said that Hashem's hand is short? I can't deliver, as it were. Now that whole conversation was a tremendous challenge to God. And it's Chil Hashem. The only reason that he's not picked for that as compared to Mei Mariva, Rashi says, the Midrashim say, is because one conversation was private, namely that one was just between him and God. So God gave him a pass. And the other one was public. Mei Mariva was public. So that he can give a pass for. Okay? But really, still no, you have very fallible characters here. Okay? So now let's get into it. The Ramban, Nachmanides, is going to really center around his stuff. Okay? So when Abraham is required, he has an open discussion. He opens discussion about the infallibility. And he says, you have the case of Abraham. Abraham is required to go to Mitzrayim because there's a famine in the land. Again, going back to the verses, it says in Genesis 12, chapter 12, verses 10 through 13. This is the little background was that Abraham was told by Hashem to go to the land I'm going to promise you, namely Canaan. He goes to Canaan. He settles in Canaan. He brings the whole 318 of his band with him. Everything's fine. He's building altars all over the place. He's spreading the word of Hashem. Suddenly, there's a famine in the land. Okay, and there's a famine in the land. So, what does Avram do? He doesn't stick around. He gets out of town. It says, "Vayered Avram Mishraim." Avram went to Mishraim to sojourn there, not to live there, not to settle there. He wants to come back, but he went to sojourn. Why? Because the famine was heavy on the land. It was a very severe famine. And it was when he was coming close to Mitzrayim that he said to his wife Sarah, Sarah is now 65, Avram is 75. So he finally gives his wife a compliment, and he says, "Behold, I knew," not I know. The translation is I know many times. "Behold, I knew that you are a beautiful woman." No, it's because I didn't compliment you.
He knew that.
I knew it. I always knew you were beautiful. Shkayach. So don't get all excited. I always knew it. Just because I don't compliment you or something else. The Rashi says, the Midrash Rashi brings on the Midrashim. So one Midrash is they're crossing through the water, and she has to, so he sees her reflection. He says, I always knew you were beautiful. That's one thing. But simply stated, he's saying to his wife, and we'll find out why, I knew you were a beautiful woman. And now he says in verse 12, it will be when the Egyptians see you, and they will say, this is his wife, because they're going to want you for the Pharaoh or for themselves. And what they're going to do, they'll kill me, and they'll keep you alive. So he says, please say you are my sister, in order that will be good. It'll be good for me on your behalf, and then my soul will live because of you. Okay? So he's telling his wife, lie, lie, lie. Through your teeth. Tell him I'm your brother. Now, regardless of how we want to settle that up, in other words, if I want, what the Sifti Chacham says, just to be fair to what Avram was saying, was, tell them you're my sister, and I'll tell them when they ask me for your hand of marriage, I'll say, really, she's married. And her husband went for a trip. But if you want, I will try to find the husband, get him to give her a divorce, and then you can take her. Because it would be wonderful to marry into such a beautiful family. That was his game plan. Mm-hmm. Okay? The bottom line is that they weren't interested in game plans like that. They talked about her and took her for Pharaoh. But he's still telling his wife to lie for him. Okay? So you're telling to lie. So the Ramban says two things. One, it was a great sin that he left Mitzrayim. Why? Because he should have relied upon Hashem for sustenance. That's number one. Never should have gone. And by the way, you have to think about something else. Did everybody leave Canaan? No, it's only Avram who was leaving Canaan. So in other words, if you have the case of what?
How do we know that?
Because otherwise you're going to leave the land desolate. People don't walk away from Texas because they're having a drought. They've been having a drought for 5 years. Nobody walks away from Texas.
I thought they were all in. No.
Okay, they're all in South Bend, coming to South Bend.
Yeah, right.
South to South Bend. Okay. CDI, Community Development Initiative. Yeah. So the 3 people watching this. And millions of them.
Oh, I forgot what being.
But it's no. So people weren't leaving. It would be like, and I want to make a distinction. If it was in New Orleans when the water things, what are they called?
Hurricane.
But what's it called that broke?
Levees.
The levees. When the levees broke and the water's coming and gushing in, people are leaving town. That's not the time to say, I have faith and I trust.
Right.
God sends you the boat, the helicopter, you get out.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
On the other hand, when nothing's breaking, they just tell me it could break, but there's no storm there, and nobody's leaving, so I shouldn't be the first one out. If God told me to live in New Orleans, that's Canaan. It's not for me to get out right now. Okay? That's what the Ramban is arguing. He showed a lack of faith. Okay? A major statement to make, by the way, against Avram Avinu. But nonetheless, he said that, and then he said, furthermore, he sinned because he never should have told Sarah to lie. And he says, because of this sin, the Jewish people were sent to Mitzrayim and were enslaved. Because we have, the Ramban says a famous thing. He says, Simon, Maaseh Avot Simon Labanim. Whatever the forefathers did becomes a sign for what is going to happen to us. So just as Avram went to Mitzrayim because there was a famine, so 2 generations removed, Yaakov would be going to Mitzrayim for because of the famine. Just as the wife was taken from Avram, so the Pharaoh would also try to take the women from the Jews. This whole thing, we became enslaved. We became a shuba to the whole system. So that's what he's saying. If they wouldn't have gone, we wouldn't have had to go either. If you would have stuck it out, according to the Ramban, then we never would have had to leave. We wouldn't have had to go through that galut. We could have been strangers, but remember, Hashem does say, you will be strangers in the land, okay, for 400 years. But I could have been a stranger living in Canaan. So I don't get ownership of Canaan. Who cares? I'm living there. After 400 years, I take over. There's nowhere in the Torah to say you must be going down to Mitzrayim, being enslaved. It says you will be a stranger in the land. And anybody who lives in, for instance, this country, you can live here a long time and still be a stranger. Mm-hmm. It's called illegal immigrants. Yeah. Okay? They're still. They don't
assimilate into the culture. They keep their own. Correct.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, but more than that, you don't become a citizen. Right. And when I went to Canada, I was on a visitor status. Mm-hmm. If I would have given up my visitor status, I could have gone to 2 things. I could have either become a citizen of the country, or I could have become a landed immigrant. Landed immigrant doesn't give me all the rights, it's some of the rights, but I'm also not giving up my U.S. citizenship. I'm not even endangering it. Okay, but that's 3 levels. But I would have to give up my visitor status after a certain amount of time. In other words, they didn't want strangers in the land living indefinitely, except for the draft dodgers. For some reason they got away with everything. I don't know what happened with them. But that's really what's happening. So would I go or not? That becomes my chait. Now, you have the wrong writing here because Hagar doesn't give birth. I'm sure that he was just tired when he wrote that. Rabbi, again, he's the one who put this together. We're just looking at his stuff. But it's not when Hagar gives birth.
Yeah.
Oh, didn't she give birth?
No, it's not. It's before that. Originally, because if you go to the story. The story says in Bereshis 16, 5 through 6. So it says, Sarai, just again put into perspective, Sarai could not have children, so she said to Avram, "Take my handmaiden Hagar and have children through her, and I'll raise them up and they'll be like mine." Okay, fine. So Avram listens to her, and because why is this Semi? He didn't run to Hagar and say, "Honey, let's go. It's time to go." But rather he waits for Sarai to bring Hagar to him. Okay, fine. Now Hagar gets pregnant on the first night, and when she sees her, the pasuk says, Sarai said to Avram, "My sin is upon you." Okay. I gave you my shame. I'm sorry. My shame is upon you. I gave you my maidservant, and she saw that she was pregnant, and I became light in her eyes. Why? Because Hagar, according to the Chazal, Hagar said, clearly a miracle was done. Because remember, it's the first night. After the first night, she got pregnant. Okay, it's not normal, although people seem to think the opposite. But okay, we can argue that out ad nauseum, but it's she held it was a miracle, and she said, and yet Sarai, who claims to be such a tzedekah, a righteous person, if she was really such a righteous person, Hashem should have certainly given her a miracle, and she should become pregnant after all these years. Okay, so clearly she's not what she appears to be, and she starts to treat her differently.
Who starts? Sarah?
Hagar starts to treat Sarai differently.
Hagar starts to
treat her master
differently. So in other
differently.
words, so when this is where there's a mistake in this. You're saying that
I'm setting you up. No, because she didn't have a child yet. She got pregnant. So what happens? So it says she only got pregnant. So then says she tells Avram, Sarah is telling Avram, Hashem will judge between you and me. What's going on there? Okay? What happened was, again, the rabbis kick in, fill in the story here. When Sarai was being denigrated by her maidservant, she gave an ayin hara, an evil eye. What happened? Hagar miscarried, lost her child. So Hashem should judge between me and you, because you saw the shame that my Hagar was put me through, and you didn't raise your voice. No good. You didn't do nice. Okay. So Avram says to Sarai, here is your maidservant in your hands. She's in your power. Do whatever what you want to. So what happens? The pasuk says, "But Sarai afflicted her." According to the rabbis, made her do the dishes. Okay, made her be a maidservant. In other words, didn't treat her like a secondary wife. Correct. That's according to the Midrash. Yes. And so what happens? She flees away from before her, and then she meets the angels who tell her, you will have a child, you will call him Yishmael, and so on and so forth. So, let's just say, when it says Hagar gave birth, that's not true. She didn't give birth yet. Okay. But anyway, Sarah is given permission by Avram to do whatever she pleases. She ends up torturing her, and so the Ramban comments, that both Avram and Sarah were at fault for this, and this is why the descendants of Yishmael continue to torment us. The Ramban is saying that, okay? 1194 to 1270.
What is meant by torturing? I mean,
killing us.
No, that's torment. It said about Sarah?
Torturing her. Again, she made her do the dishes, whatever it was that she was doing.
That's a pretty heavy word for
yes, because she wasn't treating her like that beforehand. So anything that you're treating her in a denigrating manner. Let's say, for instance, by the way, let's say Reuven buys a Hebrew servant, Shimon. Okay, Reuven is not allowed to say to Shimon, "Weed the garden till I come back." You're not allowed to do that. You can say "weed the garden," you can do it, but you can't say "weed the garden till I come back," because then you're showing ownership. And you don't own the guy. You bought his services, but you don't own the guy. Okay. So when she is now acting as the owner and afflicting her more so than she would make her do before this whole event, she's getting revenge, as it were. So that's at least how Hagar certainly envisioned it. So she runs away. Well, because of that affliction, the Ramban is saying, and Avram gave her permission, as it were, to do this. So the children, her children, the Ishmaelites, the Arabs today, will continue. That's why they torment. And he was talking in those days. That's why they continue to torment us. So whatever, again, Maaseh Avot Simul Labanim.
There's no way out of this?
That's a different question. And I don't want to get into that. But yes, there's ways out of everything. It's called tikkuna. But we have to, that would be a whole different test. We're just looking at the mistakes they made and asking, did they really make mistakes? And if so, how do we understand them? Okay. So now, he said, not all, Flug is telling us, not all Rishonim accept the Ramban's interpretation, but they also don't seem to reject the possibility that Avram and Sarah could have sinned. And you have the Torah who says regarding Ramban's comment about Avram telling Sarah to lie, the Torah writes that he doesn't see anything wrong with what Avram did. Rather, he was correct in not relying upon a miracle. Ein somchen al hanes. We're always told you shouldn't rely upon a miracle, so he wasn't so bad. But when it comes to Sarah's torture of Hagar, Torah writes similar words to that of the Ramban. In other words, you had no right to do that. Because you did that, we're paying for it. So he splits it up. Okay, you have Acharonim, you have some Shafal Hirsch, who uses the Ramban's comment to teach an important lesson. And this is what most people would say today. They really follow Hirsch with this. The Torah doesn't cover up the faults of the patriarchs or the matriarchs or other leaders because the fact that they have flaws doesn't diminish them. Rather, it shows that they were also humans who struggled with certain challenges and were able to overcome those challenges. Okay, that's, if you look at the Art Scroll, I think it's Art Scroll, who says that we have, when we're looking at the stories of David and Shaul, and we condemn them with our Lilliputian minds. Okay? We don't understand the whole thing they want to say, and because the Tanach writes in a manner that you're putting them under the microscope, so we really don't know everything that's going on. We just get the star headlines, like on MTZ or TMZ, where you get these crazy headlines. So that's how everybody understands it, but it's wrong. That's what they would claim. Okay. So Hirsch is saying, on one hand, the Torah doesn't cover up their faults. They had faults. We have to understand they have faults. Now, by the way, this is another complaint about the Art Scroll books that people had about the people like Rev Moshe, where they made them, Rev Moshe, or whoever it was, every single Gadol story was the same. At 3 years old, they knew Shach. And their lips never touched anything, they never spoke Lashon Hara, blah, 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 blah. We look at them and say, I'll never get there.
Why try?
Why try? It's just impossible. As compared to that this Gadol used to play basketball, and he was running with the gangs, and he did this and did that. We can understand that. We can deal with that. They read the New York Times, because that was a big thing in those days. Yeah. They read this, they did that. Okay, they played stickball. I understand that. Okay, I can. What? Watch television. I want you to know it was a very interesting thing. When I was at a convention, this was 9/11, right after 9/11. So I went to a convention that year, and one of the rabbis said, as we watched the towers fall, not that any of us have TVs, God forbid, right? But he was making a joke. We all watched it. We all saw the towers come. I don't care who you are. You all saw but that's the whole thing. We can all joke about this. But when people say that they never saw these things, they never spoke a word of Lashon Hara, okay, I mean, good luck to you. But I can't live up to that. There's no chance. If you started from the beginning of time, you have to do it, and didn't have to work at yourself, I can't do that. I can't even think about who you are. You're so much above me. As compared to these people, when the Torah makes them human and shows that they're humans, so Hirsch is saying that we can live with that. We can understand these people. They had the same struggles as us, and so it's worthwhile learning the story to figure out what they did, and maybe we disagree with what they did, and maybe we have to do a tikkun for what they did. Who knows? Okay. Others say like this. So Rabbi Elazar Ashkenazi writes that one can only make a comment like Ramban if one has support from the verses. In other words, if I'm going to say that he sinned, I better get somebody to back me up. I don't care who you are. Okay, that was one level. Yeah.
I had a question going back a little bit. Able to overcome the challenges. Where do we see that Sarah and Abraham overcame this particular type of challenge?
They grew past it. They didn't get stuck in it.
Explain. Give an example.
What happens is, if a person, you make a mistake, right? So what happens? Many times people get stuck in the mistake, and they can't see their way past the mistake, and they just keep going on that path. In other words, person will say, if I would say to a person, you just because you had treif once doesn't mean you have to continue eating treif. Rabbi, I'm going to hell anyway. I'm too old. Okay, they're stuck in their mistake. That's what you're being called, stuck in a mistake. As compared to, you're right, I made a mistake. I can reverse course, recalculating.
Recalibrating.
No, it's recalculation. Recalculating. And she comes up with GPS comes up with a brand, or he or she comes up with a brand new course. Recalculating route.
But in the case of Hagar?
Hagar, first of all, Hagar does tshuva anyway. She becomes Ketara. She comes back to Avram later on. Because Yitzhak brings her. But my point is that Sarah and Avraham, okay, do go on to get Yitzchak, and they do go on to build a whole thing where we benefit from that. So they didn't get stuck in the mistake and say, "Oh, we should never have done that. Oh my God, what do we do? And how can we go past this?" No, they did go past it. That's the point. Whether or not they clearly recognized something was there. Okay, and that's why Sarah says, "Like God judged between me and you. I gave an einhara. I killed the baby." You know, she clearly felt guilty about that, but from that line, nonetheless, we have to go on. We all make mistakes. So like God judged between me and you. Fine. So now Yisrael, so the Chafetz Chaim says, he suggests that the Ramban must have had a Masorah based on Chazal to say such a thing. Okay, so that's something else. Here this actually falls into what, again, most Kiruv professionals will say. Okay? Namely, that the rabbis didn't get anything on their own. I've said this 1,000 times, and I believe it. The rabbis don't get anything on their own. Whether or not it's written down is something else. But it was given over to them. So they present something. Can they come up with something new, a brand new interpretation? No. But they can come up with a nice, different way of saying it, yes. Which is gets to what for instance, the Chazon Ish, who was using yesterday's class. I refer you to yesterday's class. It's available on YouTube. Channel Rabbi Neville. Okay. Let's give my shout out.
A little plug.
Right, a little plug. But there, the Chazon Ish, when he's talking about educators, when he's bringing up the Gemara, he tells you where he's getting it from, the Gemara, and he puts into real life situations. Clearly, he has an agenda going on there, as we discovered. But nonetheless, he's giving that presentation. Is he allowed to? Absolutely. That's what we do. We use the Gemara, we use the Torah, and we speak to the modern day with that. That's what we're supposed to do. So to say the Ramban was saying it on his own, the Chafetz Chaim wants to say, no, he had to have a Masorah. That's what he's holding. On the other hand, Rav Hirsch doesn't totally agree with that, but what he says is that MS truth seems to be the ultimate decision in the Parshanut. In other words, the explanations. And then he says, but you have to be somebody of the stature of the Ramban to say such a thing. But if this is the way the Ramban understood Pesukim, that's how he should interpret it. So on one hand, he takes the license and limits it. He says, when you get to the Ramban's level of understanding, you know Kol HaTorah Kula, you know everything about the Torah, fine. Then you can make a decision, again, based on Chazal, was this right, was it not right, and giving you a decision on that. But still, that's why it's like a combination that he's saying here on it. But he's saying, with all that, we have to be truthful about it. We have to look at it and say, what did they do? Was it right? Was it wrong? Let me put myself in this situation. By the way, if you ever want to understand the story, you need to put yourself in their shoes. It's very hard to do, but you have to do it. You can't put them in your shoes. Okay? I can't bring them to 2014. Which year I am already. You can't bring them to 2014 and say, based upon our moral structure, which we have none, so this is what it is. I have to go back to their time and say, what would I have done, knowing where the role of woman was, knowing how people acted, using my archaeology, using all that stuff that we have, and say, did he have a choice? Would I have reacted any differently? Would I have left Canaan? I'm a sojourner. I have no land. What would I have done? Even though God's telling me. But God's not telling me every 5 seconds what to do. He's allowing God, unlike, if you think about it, unlike Yitzchak. When Yitzchak was about to leave, Hashem says, whoa. You're not allowed to leave. You have to stay in the land. Go to Avimelech. He's still in the land. You're not allowed to leave, period. Your father can leave. Your grandfather will leave. Your grandfather can leave and your son can leave. You're stuck. You can't leave the confines. You're a korban. Forget it. You're here. But Hashem didn't do it to Avram. He said, you want to leave? Sei gesund. So he wants to see you. Come back and visit. He doesn't say anything. So clearly God could have stopped him. He was having prophecy every other day. Why not this day? Okay. So that's part of the test. What do I do? And do I pass the test? Do I flunk the test? The question is, what happens if I flunk the test?
We all pay for it forever.
Besides that, what happens to the person? What if I get up? I have to get up. In other words, what's teshuvah all about? I made a mistake, and I get up. And I just don't die on that mistake. It's not my what do you call it? That's not my Valley Forge. It's not my the other place. Waterloo. It's not my Waterloo. It's not my. I'm thinking of the other place in Texas, but it's
the Alamo.
It's not my Alamo. Okay, it's not that. I have to get up. You know, so when I was listening to on the boxing, he's a 5-time champion, or in wrestling, he's a 22-time champion. I said to somebody, you know what that means? It means he lost 23 times. He may be a 22-time champion, but he lost 23 times as a result. He's not the champion anymore. As compared to, he's the 1-time champion, but he lasted for 25 years. Great. The guy never lost. You know, give the guy praise. It's bad to be a 25-time champ? I don't think so. Okay, but it's so that's what he's claiming. Now the Gemara also has a statement, a series of statements of people in Tanach. It says anybody who says that Poloni, David, you can name anybody, David, Avram, sinned, they are, made a mistake, they're sinners. So anybody who says that these giants made a mistake, they're sinners. That's the famous statement from the Gemara. So Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, who said, he has an essay on this, and he said that the mistake of those who say that Reuben, David, or others were sinners is that one cannot examine their actions as if they were one of us. Certainly, they committed sins by what they did, but it was a mistake to interpret. But it is a mistake to interpret the verses literally. What they did was a less serious violation, but because there's a level they were on, the pasuk and the verses are written to give the impression that they violated a more serious transgression. So that's how he's looking at this. Okay, and again, if you really want to understand this, just think of the Sun. The Sun is a magazine that you can see when you're going to pick up when you're paying for your food. Okay.
The Sun, isn't that a British paper?
I don't care. What happens is it says aliens found in
National Enquirer.
National Enquirer, but it's also the Sun.
Yeah.
The Sun is the best.
Okay.
The Sun is the best. It says aliens found in Area 54 or whatever the area is called. 51. Okay.
Where's that?
Arizona?
Arizona. That's where they're supposed to. Nevada. Okay, so and then what happens is if you would ever buy, it doesn't matter. If you would ever buy the paper, which I've never done, but somebody I never did. I wasn't to spend $1.
Didn't watch TV either when the towers came down.
No, that I did see, but I never watched paper. But somebody did, and I said I have to see it. What happened? The article was the headline had nothing to do with the article.
That's right.
Okay, and that's what goes on here. We catch your attention. That's what Dessler is saying. We catch your attention, but really has nothing to do with it. When it says that David committed adultery, straight reading of the text, David committed adultery with Bathsheba, we find out when we go through the sources that really he did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. She wasn't married. She was divorced. At that point, she was divorced. Again, it's a whole Gemara here. Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck.
He sent him to the front.
It's fine. For different reasons, though. Because he was rebellious, so on and so forth. The rabbis have all the stuff lined up. All the reasons for everything is lined up. All we have to do is look in the writings and have an open mind, and we'll see everything written in the words. All we do is have the open mind and see them in the words. But if we're not open-minded and we just want to see what we want to see, then we'll see that he committed adultery. Okay, please don't get stuck. Okay, so that's what. So he's saying that's number one. The second thing is that they're not at our level. Let's face it; they had a different connection with God than we did. And again, the same thing would be if Bill Clinton, not to compare Havdil El Havdalot, total separation, but if Bill Clinton would have not have been the president with Monica, but rather would have been somebody in Arkansas when he was governor. Nobody would have ever heard of Monica, Jessica, or any other these other women. Maybe somebody in their inner circles, they would have cared, but nobody would have cared about blue dresses, red dresses. They wouldn't have cared, okay? Because he was catapulted into the national stage, everybody cared. Because he's not embarrassing or doing anything to himself, he embarrassed us. For that we put him under the microscope, okay? That's something else. But all his policies were worthless because nobody cares. And the same thing with Barack Obama, the same thing with George Bush. Their policies meant nothing to us. What they did, how they acted, their moral structure is what mattered to us. Which is why when Bush's daughters acted drunk, or got drunk, they didn't act drunk, they were drunk. So they would pictures all over the internet and everything else. What do I care? What do I care about Billy Beer? I don't care about Billy. That's Jimmy Carter. What do I care what he does? He's not the president. I don't care what he does. No, but because, again, you're catapulted into a national scene and you want to make fun of the president, so you bring those things up. Okay? So that's what they're supposed to be at a higher level. Now imagine, to come back to the Jewish world, to come back to the Torah world, if I have a rabbi who is, again, a national symbol, and he does something stupid, well, everybody's going to know that. But what happens when he doesn't do anything stupid, but he does something that arouses suspicion? Okay? That also is no good. Mm-hmm. People point the finger, and they say, how could such a rabbi do that? We expected more from that rabbi. That's what's going on here. We're not at their level. We don't understand the troubles they went through. We don't understand what the challenges were. We look and say, come on, you gave it to Bathsheba? Who is Bathsheba? So what if she's the most beautiful woman in the world? And you can have anybody you want. You hear yourself speaking? Yeah. If I can have anybody I want, she's the most beautiful girl in the world. And why not? I'm the king. And he gives in to that. Well, would you not?
It's good to be the king.
It's good to be the king. Okay? So, and then, by the way, the rabbis asked the question, how could David have fallen into such a trap? And the answer is because he challenged Hashem. He said, Hashem, I want the Amida, which wasn't yet written up yet. Don't bother me with the technicalities. Okay? He wanted to be Elokei Abraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Elokei David. He wanted to be in that group. I want to be in that austere, you say, God's group. I want to be in God's group. And God said to him, they were challenged. What is your challenge? What do you present to the table? Hashem, challenge me however you want. Whoa. Hashem challenges, says, really? You don't want to do that. You don't want to ask me those questions. And what he did was, he presented them with something and took away the divine help. Because what keeps us on the straight and narrow? Divine help. Hashem is helping us, but once you take the common sense away and you're letting us to our own devices, man are animals. Period. We're called the dogs for a reason. Okay? This is slang for a man, and you're a dog. Okay? But there's the reasons for this. So he got caught in that. Okay? But you have to, again, put yourself into their level. So now, the other thing you have to look at is, says one of the considerations in this discussion is the question of whether the mitzvah of judging every person to the side of merit applies. On the one hand, the personalities of Tanach should deserve the same benefit of doubt as anyone else. On the other hand, the proper interpretation of the Torah is a very important value. So, Rav Levi ibn Chaviv was asked why certain times Chazal, the rabbis, prefer the approach of giving a personality in Tanakh the benefit of the doubt, and at certain times he is not given the benefit of the doubt. And while the Maharal Bach, that's what we're talking about, doesn't reject this premise, in fact he strengthens it by saying that the instances highlighted by the questioner do not show any wrongdoing, but rather how great they are. His comments imply that when given two interpretations, one should choose the interpretation that places our leaders in the best light possible, but at the same time we have to understand they did make mistakes, and that's the end of it. Again, they're at a higher level. They should have known better. Shaul should have known better. David should have known better. Moshe should have known better. They're all at that level. Okay, where when they make a mistake, and again, think of Moshe's mistake. He hit the rock. He didn't speak to the rock. If you or I would have done that, and I've said this many times, nothing would have happened. We're not that. First of all, God talking to me. Maybe He would have punished me. Some other punishment. But to be written in the Torah forever that was your mistake, and say you didn't trust me, come on. It's hard. It's hard to believe. Okay, so now there's a story. Finally, the last story that's written by Tiferes Yisrael, who was Rabbi Yisrael Lipschitz, I think it was, and he says the story is like this: there was a king who heard about the great leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu and wanted to know what kind of character traits make someone such a great leader. So he asked an artist to visit the Jewish people and draw a sketch of Moshe. When he returned, he showed it to his experts. When the guy returned, the artist, the king showed it to his experts, who had the ability of determining character traits based upon one's look, and they unanimously came to the conclusion that Moshe had terrible character traits. He was full of anger, he was haughtiness, jealousy, etc. The king got angry and said, "It can't be." So what happens? Like all good government officials, the experts blame the artist for not drawing properly, and the artist blame the experts for not interpreting properly. So each one blames the other. Fine. Okay. The king decided that he was going to visit Moshe Rabbeinu and find out the truth. When he arrived, he took out the picture, and lo and behold, the picture was exact. The king didn't know what to do, so he asked Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said the experts were correct. He did have all the character traits that they described. However, the reason why he is the leader of the Jewish people was that he was able to overcome those challenges. That's the end of it. Okay? So what we're hearing is a very important thing. I can have faults. Everybody has faults. Everybody, according to Koheles, will sin, with the exception of few. Very few exceptions. But we all have the power to overcome any one of those desires. It's within our power to do that at our own level, and we have to strive to that. And that's what makes us, us. Or to quote Star Trek, the original one, when Kirk was split by the transporter. Y'all Star Trekkies, guys. When he was split, it doesn't matter. He was split by the good Kirk and the bad Kirk. And what we saw from that was the good Kirk couldn't really make a decision to save his life, literally. And the bad Kirk was the one who could make all those decisions. So what did we learn? That the good, you need both together. Right? You need the Yetzer Hara to do things, but the Yetzer Tov has to be the commander of the Yetzer Hara. It has to be subject to that. So that's what he's saying here. It's true, Moshe is saying, according to this midrash. It's true. I am haughty. It's true. I am full of anger. Everything is true. But I control it. That's what makes him as a leader.
That's the next great class, the whole life.
This is me.